الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعملا يا رب العالمين. أما بعد. So we're going to continue inshallah our study of the 12th chapter of the Quran, which is called Surah Yusuf. And we've covered the first few verses. In terms of the story, this is the story of the Prophet Yusuf. We covered the section where the Prophet Yusuf went to his father, Prophet Yaqub, and told him about his dream. And his father told him, don't tell your brothers. They would be a little bit jealous, and shaitan would come and cause a lot of problems. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shifts to a conversation now between the brothers. And they've come together and they're trying to figure out what to do about Yusuf because they're really, really jealous of him. And we discussed how they sat together and they said that Yusuf and his brother Binyamin are more beloved to our father than us. Whereas we are like a group of people, there's a whole bunch of us, we're so many of us, and we're strong, we help our father, and yet he loves Yusuf and our younger brother. They said our father's making a major mistake. And so we spoke about how that's a flawed reasoning, to be honest. But when someone's jealous, they're not always reasoning accurately. And then they started coming up with ideas of what to do. And the first suggestion was just outright kill Yusuf. And it goes to show something about their mindset, that that's what actually came up. Like maybe we should kill him. And then they said, okay, no. Maybe we can just throw him and leave him in some distant land. And then they expressed their intention, their goal. They said, if we can get rid of Yusuf, finally our dad will love us. We ended up talking about how interesting it is. How in life, sometimes we want something that's good. Is it wrong for these sons of a father to desire the approval, the love of their father? Is there something wrong with that? Not at all. That's totally natural and that's good. But subhanAllah, in their desire to acquire it and their jealousy of their brothers, they were now ready to resort to means that were, to any really ethical, moral person, would be wrong. And in their minds, that's what made it okay. That the ends justify the means. And sometimes we do that. We spoke about this last week. That sometimes we tell ourselves, hey, I'm doing it for a good reason. Even though what I'm doing is haram, it's wrong, it's prohibited, I know it's wrong, but hey, at the end of the day, it'll all turn out okay, so that's fine. And whatever we did wrong, we'll just ask Allah for forgiveness and we should be good. That's what they said, right? وَتَكُونُ مِن بَعْدِهِ قَوْمًا صَالِحِينَ. They said, we'll become pious later on. So we'll kind of mess around, we'll do a lot of things wrong, but ultimately we'll repent and ask God for forgiveness. And subhanAllah, one of the things to remember is, you know how physically sometimes you injure yourself and you're never the same after that? You ever seen that? You ever seen sports athletes at the top of their game get injured and they were never the same after that? Right? I always come back to this example because when I used to watch basketball, this is what kind of, came up for me. MVP Derrick Rose was never the same. We never saw that version of Rose after that injury, the ACL injury. Spiritually, it's the same thing. Sometimes in life, you're going to make a mistake. And spiritually, you will really struggle to go back to the spiritual state you were in prior to the mistake. You know that Allah forgives the sin. You know that Allah will wipe away the sin. But you can't rewind the tape of life. And so you'll always have the, recognition and the recall of what you did. And that's something to think about. Whenever you're nafs or shaitan comes and whispers to you about, doing something wrong is, okay, I could do it, I could repent, but maybe I'll never get what I did out of my mind. And people struggle with that. I've spoken to many people, and it's a real struggle. It's shame, really. Psychologically speaking, it's deep shame. It's where you go to sleep at night, you lie down, and you just, all the instances when you made major mistakes come back to mind. You've asked Allah for forgiveness, you've tried to change your life, you've tried to start praying, doing better, but all the mistakes you made come back. And that's its own form of trial and tribulation that an individual faces. And sometimes it's very hard for people just to go back to normal. Do you know what I'm talking about? We have an expression for this. We don't like to talk about this because it's a sensitive topic, but when someone loses their innocence, when they realize that the world can be a dark place, that people aren't always as nice as they present themselves to be, and it's tough. It's very tough to come back from that. And so that's where we need good mentorship, honestly, for people to warn us about the challenges in life. But ultimately, we also need to be receptive to that advice. So, may Allah protect us all from ever making a mistake that we really struggle to recover from. Ameen. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in verse 10, He mentions how one of them said, okay, fine. And this was like the voice of reason, who finally everyone's like, yeah, that makes sense. قَالَ قَائِلٌ مِّنْهُمْ لَا تَقْتُلُوا يُوسُف. First he's like, listen, we're not killing Yusuf. I just rule that out. And that's interesting because the first suggestion was to kill Yusuf. And you could think about situations where someone suggested something. And you ever seen that, where someone suggests something and no one wants to be the one to say, that's a terrible idea? Right? Everyone, it's crazy. It's called pluralistic ignorance. Everyone knows it's a foolish idea. No one has the courage to say it. So then everyone thinks, maybe I'm just the one who thinks it's foolish. But all it takes is one person. Remember that. And you could be that person in life. If you ever are in a circle with a group of friends and someone comes up with a really bad idea, be the one to speak up and say, no, we're not going to do that. That's a terrible idea. And now you might be thinking, if I say it, everyone's going to think, like, what's wrong with you? You'd be surprised. More often than not, you'll have some people there who'll be like, yeah. Like, you know what? He's got a point. She's got a point. Yeah, we probably shouldn't do that. They didn't have the courage. But when one person says it, everyone else is like, yeah, that makes sense. And they kind of jump on board. So that's what happens here, clearly. Because the first suggestion is kill Yusuf. So you need someone to speak up and say, like, no. And so people did that, and then everyone's like, yeah, we're not doing that. The final conclusion was, don't kill Yusuf, rather, throw him in the bottom of a well. And now, this was not a well that was full of water. There's a lot of dry wells. So it goes deep down, and then it's just dry down there. In case you're wondering, like, if he stayed in the well so long, was he, like, swimming the whole time, treading water? I remember when I was younger, I didn't know about, like, wells without water. So when I heard Yusuf was in a well, I'm like, that dude was swimming for long. No, that's how I thought about it. I'm just being completely, like, honest with you, right? Any of you ever had that thought? Thanks, guys. Like, no one told me. How is it that everybody knows and no one told me? That's messed up. Okay. So they said, throw him to the bottom of a well. And then look how they kind of make themselves feel good about it. Because if you put someone at the bottom of a well, like in a distant land, you take him really far away, put him in a well, how is someone going to find him? Right? You don't really expect anyone to go find him. But what do they tell themselves? We'll put him there. And you know what? Maybe some travelers will pick him up. You ever like taken a bad idea and try to put like a positive spin on it? So you're like, yeah, we'll go do this terrible thing. But hey man, maybe like someone will like be inspired by us and want to be Muslim. It's like, no, that's not how that works. We should go to the club. You know, and people see our hijabs and be like, yo, Muslims, we should go give da'wah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's interesting what we do though. No, I'm serious. I gave a really extreme example. relatively speaking. But a simpler example would be like, I'm going to go talk to her, but I'll tell her about Islam. Right? But maybe she become Muslim. It's like, that's not your intention, dude. You know it too. But you acknowledge what you're doing is wrong, but then you try to justify it through a positive spin. So that's what they say. We're going to put him in the bottom of a well, but hey, like, someone will come by and pick him up and take him on, so then we won't have to deal with him. And we didn't kill him, right? We didn't kill him. You kind of did. By leaving him to die, you kind of did. But it's like that passive, it's like the trolley paradox. Like, do you pull the lever, right? And actively get involved in someone's death, or just let them die pass? I didn't touch it. Like, it just went the way it was going. So that's kind of what they're doing here. Now, the Quran, when you read the Quran, one of the challenges is the Quran's not like a novel. So you don't get to in-betweens of what happens. So as we read verse number 10, Allah Ta'ala is talking about the brothers gathered together discussing what to do with Yusuf, and they decide, put him in a well. And the very next verse is now the brothers are all standing in front of their father. So it just jumps. You get it? Like, there's no like, okay, they agreed, and the next morning they woke up and proceeded to go stand in front of their father. Like, none of that's mentioned. But it's understood. You're meant to be able to put it together because it's not a novel book. What's important is the next conversation. They come to their father and they say, Ya Abana, O our father. They don't say, look at this. They don't say, they finally in verse 12 say, send Yusuf with us tomorrow so that he may enjoy himself and play. But look how they start. They start with guilt tripping. Right? Someone comes to you and says, how come you don't trust me? So what's your immediate response? What's your immediate response if someone says that to you? You're like, no, why not? I trust you. Now that they've gotten your commitment, they'll say, okay, so give me this. And you're like, if I say no, I kind of prove their point. And if I say yes, I give them what I don't want to give them. Look how they start. Oh, our father, why don't you trust us with Joseph, although we truly wish him well? Isn't that interesting? That they go and they tell their father that he's the problem. Why are you suspicious? Interesting. That what the human being can do is deceive others and in the process deceive themselves. Because at the end they say what? We truly wish him well. What are they doing? They're lying. They're lying. Look what jealousy does. It starts with just, I'm jealous and I want something good. Like, they want something good. They want their father's love. And so what do? They go and they lie. Fascinating. Do you lie to the people you love? Interesting. No, but that's what they're doing. They want their father to love them, and they go and they lie. And what do they lie about? They lie about their intentions with one of the most beloved children of their father. And so they say, send him out with us tomorrow. أرسله معنا غدا. Send him out. يرتع ويلعب. He'll enjoy himself. He'll play. He'll have a good time. وإنا له لحافظون. For those of you who know Arabic, there's a lot of emphasis here. Like, and we will, that's why the translator said, and we will really watch over him. Meaning what? This is like the equivalent of what we would say, like, Wallahi billahi tallahi, we will take care of him. Like, I promise you that we will take care of him. Look at what they're saying. Now, the response of the Prophet Yaqub is prophetic. What does he say? He says, قال إني ليحزنني أن تذهبوا به. He said, it would really sadden me if you took him away with you. وأخاف أن يأكله الذئب. And I fear that a wolf may devour him. وأنتم عنه غافلون. While you're negligent of him. He doesn't say to them, I don't trust you. Really interesting. Because think about that. If he said that, how would that affect the relationship? That would just confirm everything they had been feeling, no? They would have been like, see, we were talking about how our father loves him more than us, just proved it. You know what? Your idea of killing him? Good idea. Let's go back to that one. Like, it would have further inflamed them. He didn't say that. He says, I'd get really sad if he was far away from me. I don't like Yusuf to go far away. And he's hoping that they'll get the message. That he doesn't really want to send Yusuf with them. And this is I think something we can also learn in how we say things and how we go about things. To give people a way out. Because sometimes people don't always want to say everything clearly just because it's embarrassing. And I'll give you an example, like a real example. Maybe Allah Ta'ala has blessed you in your life and you have, mashallah, the ability to go and eat out very frequently. Right? So you go out, you eat, maybe multiple times a week at a restaurant, spend money, and there's no issues for you, maybe. And so you keep, you invite this friend, and they start turning you down. They're like, no, I can't come. No, I'm busy. And you're like, really? Like, we're not important to you? Like, why are you just not coming anymore? Maybe that friend doesn't have the same financial freedom that you do. They don't want to say that, right? They don't want to say it and be like, yeah, I can't really spend the way you guys are spending. So they just, because then, you'll probably make the offer, mashallah, you guys are nice people. You're like, no, I'll pay for you. And they're like, then I become a burden. I don't want to become a burden either. It's kind of weird. I feel like it's charity at this point. So they just say I can't come. I'm busy. And for us to be gracious enough to go, no worries, no problem. Maybe if we notice it happen a few times, to be like, yeah, no worries. Next time, let's just do a gather. Let's get together at a park or something and just hang out. So there's no financial constraint. Do you get what I'm saying? And if you notice that, all of a sudden they're able to come, you can put it together. Okay. And so you don't embarrass them. Does that make sense? And even when you're trying to express something, to not always be so direct as to point out how the other person maybe didn't do everything correctly. So, and there's a lot we could say here about the different instances, but there's something called tact. Young children don't typically have tact, right? Kids will just say it how it is. And we're not meant to be kids. That's why you ever, and I say this as a parent because I have young kids, right? You go to someone's house and they're asking your son, how's the food? And he's just straight up, yeah, it's not that good. And I'm like, bro, I'm embarrassed. I'm like, bro, you can't say that, right? Because they don't understand. They're just being honest. And it's really weird because you're trying to explain to them, you have to have tact. But then they're like, but dad, then I'm lying. You're like, man, when did you become a scholar? We're trying to figure this out. You need a fatwa now? No, it's just interesting. As adults, we recognize, though, that not every truth has to be spoken. And there are ways to convey a message without breaking someone's heart. And so he doesn't say directly to his own children, yeah, I don't trust you. Because those are words that just pierce your heart, and sometimes the scar never vanishes. The pain remains there. And someone was recently telling me, they've now graduated from university, by the way. They said in high school, someone said something to them. And they said, I didn't think it affected me, but here I am, probably 8 years later at least, and I still remember it. Any of y'all remember something someone said to you in high school? Anyone? How many of y'all remember something that, good or bad, by the way, good or bad, and you just remember how much it meant to you? Interesting. They probably even forgot that they said it, right? They don't even remember. If you go confront them, be like, hey, do you remember you said that? And they're like, do I know you, right? Who are you? You're like, no, you said this to me. Interesting how we don't forget what's said to us. In English, we have a saying, and interestingly, in Arabic, we have the total opposite saying. So in English, what do we say about sticks and stones? Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That's a lie. That's a lie. In Arabic, that's not what we say. We say جراحات السنان لها التيام ولا يلتام ما جرح اللسان أو ولا يلتئم ما جرح اللسان, which is the wounds caused by spears and weapons. And remember, Arabs were like a warrior class, right? So they're talking about like spears and arrows, right? The wounds caused by spears and arrows, they'll heal. They'll heal. But the wounds caused by someone's tongue and the words they uttered sometimes never heal. 20 years later, you still remember. You know anyone like that who just brings up stuff that was said 15, 20 years ago? Right? You ever seen couples like that? Your mom said this to me. And you're like, oh man, that's like 25 years. She's passed away. And you're still bringing it up. No, but it's pain. It's pain. Words are powerful. So the prophet is prophetic. He knows how to navigate the conversation. He says, you know, it's gonna really make me sad if you take him. And he says, I fear that a wolf will eat him. How likely is it that a wolf will eat Yusuf? Really? In the middle of a desert? Right? Like, I don't think wolves were just walking around. But, you know, he gives him a reason, like, I'm worried that a wolf will eat him. And then he doesn't even say, because y'all are just forgetful. Are any of you accused by your parents of being very forgetful and neglectful? Anyone? I have my hand up too, or don't worry. When I was growing up, wallahi al-azim, my mother used to say this to me, wallahi. She's like, if your head was not attached to your body, you'd forget it somewhere too. That's what she would say. My mom's savage like that sometimes, yo. She's like, if your head was not attached to your body, you'd leave it somewhere too. I was very hasty, so I'd forget stuff. And it's crazy as my son's the exact same way. And I'm trying to look at him like, dude, don't be hasty, right? He forgets his water bottle. He'll forget stuff all the time. So interesting. He doesn't say that to them, though. He's not like, oh, because you guys are jealous. He doesn't say it straight up. He gives them like an excuse. Like, yeah, you know, something might happen to him because, you know, you might just not realize. أنتم عنه غافلون. You might just not be aware. Without you realizing, a wolf will come and eat him. Giving them a way out, giving them an excuse, like prophetic. And look what they say. They didn't get the message. Or they were just hell-bent on what they wanted to do. قالوا لئن أكله الذئب ونحن عصبة إنا إذا لخاسرون. Look, if a wolf were to devour him, despite how strong we are, man, then we're the losers. So, in logic, there's a way to break this down. They said, if a wolf were to devour him despite our strength, we would be losers. Meaning, but we're not losers. So a wolf won't devour him. That's what they're trying to say here. Logically, that's what follows. They're saying, if a wolf ate him, despite how strong we are, we're losers. But Dad, you know, you didn't raise no losers. So a wolf's not going to eat him. And subhanAllah, you know, the Prophet Yaqub in his immense wisdom, he let Yusuf go. Because he didn't know, right? The Prophet Yaqub did not know for sure that something bad would happen. But he was a prophet of God, and he trusted them. Later on in the story, it's mentioned that when he let them go, he said, Allah is a guardian over what we've said. Wallahu ala ma naqulu wakil. Because when the second time he came to send his son, Binyamin, he said the same thing to his sons. He said, whatever promise I'm making you, or you're making me, about bringing Binyamin back, you made the same promise with Yusuf. So we know that that's the promise made here. They said, we promise we'll bring him back. And the Prophet Yaqub said, okay. Allah is a guardian over what we're saying. And that's interesting, right? Because that is the challenge of parents. Is you watch over your child, but you also have to let your child go in the world. And it's tough because the world's not always a pleasant place. And then that's where you get helicopter parents or bulldozer parents. Bulldozer parents are those who bulldoze the path and say, we're going to do everything to make our child's life as easy as possible. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing to make your child's life as easy as possible because they don't know then how to develop resilience and grit and overcome challenges. So when like your parents make you do some chores and make you do some stuff, I hate to say it, it's kind of for your own good, right? You don't want just an easy path. But you also don't want helicopter parents. These are parents who don't trust enough and just they think that if I just hover over my child all the time, I can guarantee their success. No, you just develop a child that has no self-efficacy. This child doesn't know how to handle themselves in the world. And I've seen many children who are resentful about this because their parents never got them a license at 16. So I'll drive you wherever you need to go. They're like 21 and they're still getting driven around. They feel so resentful. They're like, I don't know why my parents won't let me get a license and like get my own car and learn how to drive so I can go places. Some of y'all are looking at your friends, man. Don't make it awkward, yo. This is super awkward, mashallah. But you get what I'm saying? You don't want helicopter parenting. He says, go ahead, take him. Allah, he trusts Allah. Allah is a guardian. Because, he had already seen the promise of God in that dream. The dream that Yusuf had, he realized that his son was going to have a bright future. And that's really interesting. Imagine you had a dream in which you were told you're going to have a bright future. How do you expect that to work out? We expect to wake up the next morning and all of a sudden opportunities are coming our way and, doors are opening for us and people are reaching out to offer us different, sponsorships and different things. That's not how it works. That's not like a universal truth of how the path to flourishing in life is not one that happens on magic carpets and in a silver platter. It takes difficult work. And I don't mean like you have to go and do like manual labor. I'm talking about sometimes it's just overcoming. It's overcoming the circumstances in front of you. It's really fascinating. Those who find themselves in different difficult circumstances with a lot of problems in life, obviously that's challenging. But the day they realize that nobody's coming to save me, that I have to do this myself and overcome this, it's almost like it lights a fire under them. And they're motivated to go and push because they know that the only way forward is over these obstacles. It's an equally, but in a different way, challenging situation? When someone has everything given to them. Now you might say, what do you mean? How's that challenging? If you have everything, just go and like maximize on the opportunities. No, but there's no motivation to. Because life has just been so good. So there's no realization of the need for effort. And I really see this to be one of the differences between the generation before us and our generation. Now before you're like, dude, you're not our generation. That's not the point. I'm talking about whether it's first, what's it called? First generation, right? Immigrants or not, right? Regardless. The point is, now we have mottos like work smarter, not harder, right? Until working smart doesn't want to work hard, and then what are you going to do, right? So the path of the Prophet Yusuf to that glory or that great status that he saw in his dream starts where? It starts at the bottom of a well. This is such an interesting thing about people, and that's why I really like to learn about people's journeys. Because if you see someone where they are, and that's one of the deceptions, is if you see someone at their pinnacle of success, the mistake you can make is to assume that they've always been there. It's not to realize that they may have had very humble beginnings. You know, it was just 2 days ago, I learned that SGA was from Hamilton. Shea Gilbert Alexander's from Hamilton. I didn't know that. Arguably one of the best basketball players in the NBA right now, by the way. He's really good. He's not from Hamilton? He's from Hamilton. I was like shocked. Like, I didn't expect this dude to come from Hamilton. And out of the prep school in Orangeville. Like, very fascinating to see today where he's at. He's in the playoffs. Who are the Thunder playing? Nuggets, right? So he's playing against Jamal Murray, who's from Kitchener. It's just fascinating to see how people are where they're at today, but they weren't always there. There was a day where they were playing in high schools like many of you may have played in high school. But there's a journey. There's sacrifices to be made along the way. There's difficulties to be bore, hardships to go through. And so that's an example that we see right here. فَلَمَّا ذَهَبُوا بِهِ وَأَجْمَعُوا. And so they took him away. When they took him away and decided to throw him into the bottom of the well. وَأَجْمَعُوا أَنْ يَجْعَلُوهُ فِي غَيَابَةِ الْجُبِّ. Allah Ta'ala says, وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِ لَتُنَبِّئَنَّهُمْ بِأَمْرِهِمْ هَذَا وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. Allah Ta'ala says we inspired him that one day you will remind them of this deed of theirs while they're totally unaware of who you are. I want you to pause for a moment and try to take the perspective of the Prophet Yusuf. Where does he end up? He ends up being taken by his brothers, and he's probably innocently thinking, oh, we're going to go play. They probably told him the same thing. We're going to go have a great time. And they're traveling. He's like, where are we going? Don't worry, we're going to have a lot of fun. And ultimately, finally, that moment of truth where they take him, tie him to a rope, and drop him into the well. And the whole time he's sitting there going, how could you do this to me? That's not what you told. No. And there he is at the bottom of the well all by himself. And they leave. In that moment, what does the future look like for you? As the Prophet Yusuf, what does the future look like? Tell me a possible way the story could play out in his mind as he sits there. One is that he just starves. He just dies. No one comes by. No one notices him and he's dead. What's another way? That someone does come by and what? Saves him is a possibility. It's a possibility. But also, not everybody's a good person in the world. He's just witnessed that. His own family members betrayed him. So now if a stranger comes along, is like, what? I could sell him. Yeah. Somebody kills him. Someone takes him and sees, little kid, I could go sell him. Remember, that was an era when there was slavery. Sell him into slavery, make some money. Right? There's so many possibilities. But a question arises. Wait, I could swear I just had a dream where Allah or my father said things are going to be great. Was my father mistaken? You start to question everything. Allah Ta'ala reveals to him. And think about how much comfort they must have brought the Prophet Yusuf as he's sitting there. And commentators, discuss in which way Allah revealed to him. But regardless, Allah cast into his heart the message that, look, today you're sitting alone at the bottom of a well. The day will come you will stand face to face with your brothers. And you will tell them about everything they did, and they won't even realize. Just when he thought he was abandoned, Allah comforted his heart. See, in our lives, we don't receive revelation, but we do have moments in our lives where we're wondering, Ya Allah, what's going on? How is this happening to me? What is going on? We're so confused. And if you listen carefully enough, and if you look carefully enough, you might see things come your way that send a message to you without you realizing. It's very common for people to say, what? I came across this post just when I needed it. Look, as believers, we don't believe in what's called coincidence. We don't believe in coincidence, which means what? Things don't happen by accident. It's not like Allah doesn't have control and things are just randomly happening without His say. No, we know that everything that happens to the smallest detail happens through Allah's permission. And it happens through His infinite wisdom. You don't by accident meet certain people. You don't by accident hear certain messages. You don't, without divine wisdom, come across certain posts. We can pass by signs without reading them, though. But imagine you paused for a moment and said, this message that I'm seeing in front of me, maybe this is Allah's way of conveying to me that things will be okay. I'm serious. And that it's when you start to notice that there is a divine significance. There's a divine significance to how things play out in life. The stage you're at in your life right now, you might think, man, this is not worth it. I don't know why I'm in this situation. Who knows 10 years down the line how valuable this moment will be? And maybe some of you ever heard of the butterfly effect? Right? That's just a way of trying to quantify and calculate how things play out. But you can't actually do it. I say this all the time. If you go back 5 years ago, would you imagine that you would be who you are today? And most of us will say, no, I don't think I would be where I'm at. Who wrote the story to have you end up where you are? That's Allah. And you can't write that story. You showed up today, but you had no idea who you're going to meet. These people around you did not come into your life by accident. Your question is, why would Allah have me meet them? The lecture that you're listening to right now is not by accident. Why would Allah want you to hear this? What does He want you to walk away with from this? You start to really take everything a little bit more seriously. The friend that you met and that you've been hanging out with now for months or maybe years, they entered your life for a wisdom to shape you and your experiences. And sometimes people exit. It happens. Y'all have ever had that happen? Someone that was close to you, but hey, you're just not close anymore. You drift far apart. That's life. That's how it always is. You're never together with anybody forever in life. Shakespeare said it, right? All of life's a stage. And people have their entrances and exits. That's how it works. So, to really start thinking about the fact that in my moments of pain, in my moments of uncertainty and struggle, and I'm wondering where Allah is in all of it, maybe we're just not listening carefully enough. And I've seen people, they've told me, in moments of pain, they've went to the Quran and just opened it. Ya Allah, speak to me. I need a message. And they just open it. And they're like, subhanallah. The verse that I start reading, it's like Allah speaking to me. And comforting me. And reminding me, subhanallah. But we have to hear it and see it and look for it. And so you can imagine the Prophet Yusuf in that moment. How much comfort he must have felt. Knowing that Allah has not abandoned him. Because that's the first thought, right? At the bottom of the well is what? Yeah, I thought Allah was with me. My father said so. But I guess not. And then the wahy comes and tells him no. Revelation comes and says no. We're still here with you. We were here with you when you were in the comfort of your home. And we're here with you at the bottom of the well. Because your circumstances don't define you in the sight of God. And that's really important to remember. You're not just close to God, and you don't just have an opportunity with God in your days of obedience, but also in those moments of sin. Because you're not defined by that. All right? As many steps away from God as you drift, the path back is only one step, and it's called repentance. May Allah Ta'ala grant us tawfiq to realize how important God is to us, but also how important we are to God. آمين يا رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.